Young whammons are trending communist, not liberal. Young men are not. We are in for interesting times, basically, because it looks like girls are falling for the indoctrination of the far left, and guys are like, nope. Young whammons are more likely to identify as liberal now than at any time in the past 2 decades, a trend that puts them squarely at odds with young men. The irony is, once they hit the wall and it's too late for them, they're suddenly going to become conservative. So 44% of young whammons count themselves as liberal in current year -1 compared to 25% of young men, the soy boys. According to Gallup poll data analyzed by the Survey Center of American Life, the gender gap is the largest recorded in 24 years of polling. The finding culminates years of rising liberalism. Now, there's nothing liberal about what they do. Rising fascism among whammons age 18 to 29 without any increase among their male peers. Yeah, because the men, look, just like with all communism, right? Those who are getting wealth redistributed to them support more of it. Those who are getting their wealth redistributed away from them oppose it. That's why men oppose it and women support it. Now, several societal forces have conspired to push young whammons to the left in recent years, including the Pound Me Too movement, Orange Man, rising alphabet soup identification, and more recently, abortion policy. Slower cooking trends in marital status and indoctrination attainment have also nudged the needle. Yeah, this is going to backfire on them so fucking hard. They all make the same mistakes, and they always regret it when they get older. I think there's a big generational shift that happened when Generation Z whammons who were really coming of age in the last 5 years, said Kelsey Kretschmer, a sociologist at Oregon State University who studies gender politics. The rift between young men and whammons may widen further. Earlier this year, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, a precedent that had protected abortion as a constitutional right for nearly half a century. What a mistake that was. The ruling was has energized young whammons. New survey data released this week shows that 61% of young whammons consider abortion a critical issue, compared with just 36% of all Americans. Now, this doesn't surprise me. And then by the time they get to like 40 and now I'm ready to settle down and have a kid, then they're not going to be able to. Like I've actually known women that had to come to terms with this. Women who have had multiple abortions. And then by the time they want to have a kid, they're no longer able to. And they always have to think, well, what if I wouldn't have killed the kids I did have? Like that's the future a lot of them are heading towards. I would always choose a candidate that's pro-abortion, said Rose Merhos, 21, government major at Wesleyan University. Oh, my God. A useless bloat major at a college that's famous for their bullshit that we covered on this channel. Yeah. In Connecticut, who is an avowed liberal, almost everyone either knows someone who has had an abortion or has had one themselves. This is something everyone can relate to. Just because you can relate to it doesn't mean it's a good thing, though. Everyone knows someone who's been or knows of someone who's been murdered, too. Does that mean we need more of it because it's relatable? Now, the share of men who identify as liberal has held fairly steady for almost 25 years. So contrary to what we'd like to believe, more men are not waking up. Now, according to our annual Gallup poll surveys, roughly 1/4 of men ages 18 to 29 term themselves liberal year after year. Meanwhile, among young whammons, liberalism has exploded. In the late 90s and early 2000s, fewer than 30% of whammons identified as liberal. The liberal camp grew in the second term of former President George W. Bush. It expanded further during the tenure of Obama. It reached 39% in current year -5 with the inauguration of Orange Man. In the last 2 years, it surged anew. During Bush, that's when I first realized the sheer hatred that comes out of the left towards anyone who disagrees with them. So it was under Bush where, I don't know if this is where it started or just when I first noticed it. That's when they started labeling everyone who disagrees with them as being hateful, while they're the ones that display by far the most hatred and vitriol I have ever seen. So young whammons today are much more liberal than young men. Daniel Cox wrote in a June newsletter at the Survey Center of American Life, a project of the American Enterprise Institute. His work documents a growing political rift between young whammons and men. No, only in America. If these men focus on bettering themselves, they could easily leave this country and get a woman elsewhere. They don't need to get one here. Mary Jo attended a university long associated with both liberalism and activism. These days, though, she senses more of both among women's. In all my government classes, there are probably 2 men out of 18 people, she said. And yet we need more women's programs to get them into college. The ACLU, that's mostly women's. I'm wondering if women's are maybe just more inclined to be involved in the community, engaged in the community, and that liberalizes them. No, it's because you chased the men away, and this is gonna continue. No man wants to be in this obviously hostile of an environment. God, this I didn't know though. The fact that the ACLU is mostly women now, no wonder it's fallen off a cliff. So there was a time when the ACLU was actually decent. They did their job. Now they're just activists. Ezra Meyer, 22, is a senior at George Washington University who leads the college Republicans. He is a conservative on the campus that is overwhelmingly liberal. Why'd you choose that school? And largely female. In conversations with classmates about politics, he treads lightly. Yeah, when you're dealing with children that throw tantrums whenever they're faced with something they disagree with, yeah, that's a sad fucking position to be in. And I've been there. I'm quite sure all of you listening have been there too, where you just have to sit there listening to some fucking moron who doesn't know what they're talking about drone on and on. Because you know if you correct them, they're going to throw a temper tantrum and at you. So you eventually just start avoiding those children. My metric for deciding if I'm going to be friends with someone really does not come down to what their politics are. It comes down to how tolerant they are. Yeah, and no one is as intolerant as the left. Meyer doesn't know whether the men at GW skew more liberal or conservative than the women, but he noticed a distinct trend among campus conservatives this fall. So the men might be pretending just to fit in and get their degree and get the fuck out. We've been doing a lot of recruiting of freshmen on campus, he said, and I would say overwhelmingly has been male. The conservative females that do get involved, there's fewer of them, but they tend to be way more passionate and way more involved. Several factors have liberalized the nation's 20-something whammons. The most recent, perhaps the most powerful, is Pound Me Too, an uprising of fake allegations of sexual assault, abuse and harassment that caught fire in creating -5, and probably millions of whammons to come forward and spread their lies. The inauguration of Orange Man in the same year pushed more whammons into the column. Yeah, they got TDS, basically. The 45th president battled his own Pound Me Too allegations that proved uniquely unpopular among young female voters. Polling in current year -6 showed that only 25% of whammons aged 18 to 34 favored Orange Man compared to 40% of the same-aged men. Still pretty low, even on the man side. The rise of fascism among young whammons has also marched apace with the dramatic increase in young people identifying as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer. Yeah, we call them the trans trenders. A recent survey, 56% of young whammons reported exclusive attraction to men, while 3/4 of young men said they were solely attracted to women. Prior research suggests alphabet soup Americans of all ages tended towards fascism. If there's anyone who works with any sort of research institute that happens to be listening to this, would you mind trying my suggestion, please? So I would like to see a survey like this. Like you put out a written survey or an online survey, like make sure it's completely anonymous. No one knows what anyone else's answers are. And just do the same survey about sexual identity completely anonymously. And then gather all these exact same people together in an auditorium and have them publicly state their sexual orientation to the whole group and see how the numbers change, if they change at all. I would be very interested in seeing that. Several longer-term trends have fed the fascization of young whammons as well. One is marriage. The share of whammons aged 18 to 29 who are married has fallen by half in 20 years, from 31% in current year -22 to 15% in current year -1, according to the National Opinion Research Center. And it's only going to keep getting lower. The growing ranks of single 20-something whammons feel a sense of linked fate. Researchers say they gravitate towards female friends and political views, whereas married whammons often mirror the politics of their spouses. There's a reason for that, too. Like, it's hard to be a man-hating communist harpy when the person you rely on is a man who works in a capitalist job. The correlation between Whammon's sense of linked fate and fascist political preferences suggests the Democratic Party would benefit from declining marriage rates among young Whammons. The flip side is the Republicans are going to benefit from the male side. Kretschmer and two co-authors wrote in a Current Events 5 paper for the Journal of Political Research Quarterly. They noted that Whammons make up the majority of the population and vote at high rates. And that's why the country's doomed. Whammons also outpaced men in indoctrination attainment. Yeah, they chased away men, and men, to their credit, are starting to realize they don't need college. Like, why would I spend $50,000 a year and get a useless degree and make $30,000 and be in debt when I can instead pick up a trade and get paid like $60,000 to learn on the job? And that's just the start. I trend that dates to the 80s. The ratio of Whammons to men in college enrollment now stands at roughly 60 to 40. I'm surprised that many men are still in there. And it continues to grow. Americans who complete college are more fascist than those who do not. Putting off marriage, going to college, entering the workforce, Whammons are doing that at much higher rates than they used to. Now, completely coincidentally, do you want to look at those surveys about how happy women are? They're putting off marriage, going to college, entering the workforce at higher rates, yet they've never been more miserable. And all of those things are going to make conservatism and Republicans significantly less attractive to Whammons. So you know what's going to make conservatism more attractive to Whammons? When the country collapses because of their bullshit. Like, look at how quick the strong independent woman myth fell apart when Venezuela collapsed. In 1998, the first year of data collected by Gallup in the Social Studies surveys, 28% of young men and 29% of young Whammons identified as liberal. The gender gap in fascism, grew steadily wider in 2000s, widest in the 2010s, and by the Current Events 1, the 19-point spread between young men and Whammons is the largest on record. Yeah, these men are just going to go somewhere else. So I do have some male friends that are moderates, said Lucy Petrovsky, 20, a California fascist, and it annoys the hell out of me. Why the fuck do those men put up with her? Like, maybe they're friends with benefits. What bothers her about her non-liberal friends is that not their centrism, but her suspicion that they do not have any clue why they are moderate. They just try to not want to pick a side, and therefore they are apathetic. No, they're probably actually conservative, and they're just using you for sex and don't want to ruin it.